I have kept a songbook on my dresser for 63 years. Brown cloth cover, the corners worn pale. It is the book I was holding the morning I was married. It has lived in this house since October of 1963. Before I tell you what an older sister told me outside the Kingdom Hall on the morning of October 14th, 1963, what I did not hear at 18 and have heard every single day since I turned 71, I need you to understand the kind of room I was about to walk into. In 1963, a sister did not counsel another sister about marriage. That was the work of the brothers. That was the work of the congregation's servant. We did not yet say body of elders. The body of elders did not exist yet in our congregation. It would come in 1972. The society taught us that the husband was the head of the wife, and the brothers were the head of every sister. And a sister who tried to speak between sisters about what marriage was actually going to be, that sister was understood to be sowing doubt. So you can understand why what I'm about to tell you was, in our world, an act very close to apostasy. Stay in this room with me while I tell it, not as a kindness to me, I'm too old for that kind of kindness, but as a witness. I have carried this story alone for 63 years, and I would like to set part of it down where someone can see it. After I'm done, tell me in the comments the name of the woman who tried to warn you about something you were too young to hear. I think there is one for every woman watching. I would like to read her name. The morning of October 14th, 1963, I was 18 years old. The Kingdom Hall in Mifflinburg was a long, narrow upstairs room over the hardware store on Walnut Street. We had not yet built the brick hall on the edge of town. That would come in 1971, on what was then still a hayfield, and I would help carry chairs up the new aisle as a young mother of 2. On the morning I'm telling you about, the hall was still a wood-floored room over a hardware store, and you reached it by an outside staircase that climbed up the side of the building from the alley. My mother, Pearl, had pressed her New World Translation into my hand at the house on Lewisburg's south end before we drove over to Mifflinburg in my father Walter's car. She had marked 2 scriptures with bits of paper torn from a watchtower, Ephesians the 5th chapter and 1 Corinthians the 7th. She did not open the Bible. She did not read me anything. She slid the book into my hand the way another woman might slide a handkerchief into her daughter's pocket, and she said, "Dorothy, you will be obedient." That was the entire counsel I received from my mother about what marriage was. 1 sentence. I have thought about that sentence every day since. I carried the Bible in one hand and the songbook in the other up the outside staircase of the hardware store. The songbook was already old then. It was the book before the 1966 one, the slimmer one we used for years. I held it because Brother Schaefer, he was our congregation servant in those years, before they made the body of elders. Brother Schaefer had asked me to read a scripture during the talk. I had practiced it in my bedroom. I held the songbook on top of the Bible because my hands were shaking and I needed something rectangular to grip. At the top of the staircase there was a small landing, and from the landing there was a hallway, perhaps 8 feet long, that led into the meeting room. The hallway had a single light bulb in a porcelain fixture. The floor was unfinished pine. I have lived inside that 8 feet of hallway for 63 years. She was waiting for me there. She'd let my father and my mother and Raymond's father walk past her into the hall. She'd let Edith, my mother-in-law-to-be in less than 30 minutes, walk past her into the hall. She'd let everyone go in, and then she had stayed back in the hallway and waited for the bride. Her name was Sister Joyce Yeagle. She was 41 years old that morning. She'd been married to Brother Wilbur Yeagle, an elder in the Lewisburg congregation. They used the word elder informally then, even before the arrangement, since she was 17. She had no children. I did not know why she had no children. None of us knew. We did not ask sisters that. She had been kind to me when I was a young pioneer the summer before. She had ridden with me on Saturday mornings in the cold car with the thermos between us, and she had let me practice my doorway sentence on her front porch before we went out. Joyce stepped out of the corner of the hallway where she had been standing, and she took my wrist. Not my hand, my wrist. She slid her fingers around the bone there, between the cuff of my dress and the heel of my palm, and she held on. I'm going to tell you what she said. I'm not going to tell you yet. I have spent 63 years not telling anyone, and you can give me 4 more minutes. What I want you to see, first, is a look on her face. She was not crying. She was not angry. Joyce did not have either of those gears. She had the face of a woman who was about to do something that, in our world, you did not do. The face of a woman crossing a line she had been raised not to cross. I have only seen that face twice in my whole life. The first time was Joyce in the hallway. The second time was my own face in the mirror of the bathroom on Chestnut Street one Thursday evening in the autumn of 1924. 2024, 3 weeks after I buried my husband. But I will get to that. She leaned in. The songbook was between us, pressed against my chest. She put her mouth close to my ear so that no one passing on the landing could hear, and she said the thing. I will tell you in a moment. I promise you I will. But first I want you to know what world she was speaking from. Because if you do not understand that world, you will not understand why I did not hear her. And if you do not understand why I did not hear her, you will not understand the next 61 years of my life. There is a thing about how we were raised, the sisters of my generation, and the sisters of Joyce's generation before us, and the sisters of my mother Pearl's generation before that. And it is the thing I most want to set down here today, before there are no more of us left to set it down. Sisters did not speak to sisters about marriage. Not in the way 2 women in the world might speak, not over coffee at a kitchen table, not on a porch in the evening, not on the telephone after the husband had gone to bed. We could speak to each other about field service, about the meeting schedule, about what casserole to bring to the elders' wives' gathering, about a child's school, about laundry, about a sick neighbour in the territory. We could speak to each other about every surface of a life, but underneath the surface, the inside of a marriage, the bed, the silence of the kitchen table, the bruise of being corrected for the 4th time about the same scripture, that we did not speak about, not to each other. We were taught that the proper place to bring those things was to the brothers, to the congregation servant in 1963, to the body of elders after 1972, to Raymond once I had one. The brothers were the head of the wife in the family and the head of the sister in the congregation, and a sister who tried to take her marriage to another sister, even to her own mother, was understood to be going around Jehovah's arrangement. I want to be very specific about how this was enforced, because the people inside the truth will tell you no one enforced it, that it was just a culture. But the culture was the enforcement. A sister who spoke too freely with other sisters about her marriage acquired a reputation as a murmurer. The brothers used that word, murmurer. And a murmuring sister was a sister who would not get along. She would not get married well if she was single. She would not be assigned territories with the young pioneers if she was a sister wife. She would not be visited by the elders' wives. She would, very quietly and over time, find herself moved to the edge of the congregation. No one ever told her she was being moved. She would just notice, one year, that the invitations had stopped. So we did not speak. My mother Pearl did not speak to me about her marriage to my father Walter, and there were things in that marriage that I came to suspect only as an adult. Pearl's mother did not speak to Pearl. Edith Hartwell did not speak to me about her marriage to Raymond's father, though for 12 years, every Friday, in my kitchen on Chestnut Street, Edith trained me to be a wife, and what she trained me into was the very same silence she had been trained into in 1935. The Watchtower called it spiritual food at the proper time. What it was the proper time never coming. 40 years could pass. 60 years could pass. The proper time never came. The sisters of my generation went to their graves without speaking. There was a woman in our congregation when I was 25. I will use only her first name, Frances. She had been married 4 years to a brother who, by everything that could be seen, was a fine brother. Frances came to my kitchen one afternoon in 1970. She wanted to tell me something. I do not know what it was, because I made her tea and I sat across from her at the table where Edith used to sit on Fridays, and I said to her, in the soft, calm voice I had been trained to use, I said, "Frances, have you brought this to the brothers? Because that is the place." And Frances closed her mouth, and she drank her tea, and she said yes, she had. She had not. I knew she had not, and she knew I knew. And she went home. 3 years later her marriage was the same, and her face was older, and we never spoke of it again. Let me step out of this for a moment. I want to say one thing here before I go on. I lived inside what I am describing for 60 years. I want you to know, before I take you any further into the hallway in 1963, that I am not inside it any more. There were years after. There were not many of them. I am 80 years old. There were never going to be many. But there were some, and they were the first years that have ever been mine. I will tell you what I did with them. But first I have to tell you what Joyce said. Sister Joyce Yeagle leaned in toward the bride in the hallway above the hardware store on the morning of October 14th, 1963. She put her mouth close to my ear, and what she said was this. She said, "Dorothy, you do not have to walk through that door." That was the first sentence. There was a second sentence. The second sentence was, "You do not have to. No one in there can make you. If you walk back down those stairs right now, your father will be angry for 1 year, and then it will be over. If you walk through that door, it will not be over for 50 years. I want to read those sentences again slowly, because I have read them inside my own head every day for 53 years, and I would like to read them out loud finally, where someone besides me can hear them. You do not have to walk through that door. No one in there can make you. If you walk back down those stairs right now, your father will be angry for 1 year, and then it will be over. If you walk through that door, it will not be over for 50 years. I did not understand her. That is the part I want you to sit with. I want to be very honest. I did not understand what she meant. I was 18 years old. I had been raised in the truth since I was 8. I had been baptized at 14 at a circuit assembly in a green metal trough before the eyes of 300 witnesses. I had been pioneering for 2 summers. The man waiting on the other side of that wooden door was the brother my father and my mother and the congregation servant and his own mother had all chosen for me. There was no door in the world I was more obligated to walk through than that one. Joyce was speaking to me in a language I did not have ears for. She was speaking to me about something called consent, and the word consent was not a word we used. We used the word submission. We used the word obedience. We used the word headship. We did not use the word consent. You cannot hear a word your language does not have. I looked at Joyce. I think I smiled at her. I think I patted her hand on my wrist. I cannot be sure. 63 years is a long time to be sure of the small movements of one's own face. But I know I did not stop. I shifted the songbook against my chest, and I stepped around her, and I walked the rest of that 8 feet of hallway and through the door. And Raymond turned around at the front of the room and looked at me, and Brother Schaefer began to read the scripture. And that was that. It took me 60 years to know what Joyce had been telling me. I want to tell you what I think she was telling me. I think she was telling me that the marriage I was about to enter would ask of me my entire self. Every word I might have spoken, every thought I might have thought without first checking it against headship, every choice I might have made on my own. I think she was telling me that I would lose my daughter. I do not think she knew about Lisa, of course. Lisa would not be born until 1968, would not be disfellowshipped until 1996, would not be a stranger to me for 28 years. But I think Joyce knew there would be a Lisa. I think Joyce knew that there is always a Lisa in the life of a sister who walks through that door. I think she was telling me that I would be moved, one Friday at a time, into the shape of Edith. And I think she was telling me, and this is the part I could not bear to hear when I was 70 and finally understood, I think she was telling me that I would in my own turn become a sister in a hallway, that I would see another young bride one morning, and I would be the older sister who knew, and I would have a choice, to take her wrist or to walk past her into the meeting room. And I would walk past her into the meeting room. And I did. In the autumn of 1981, on a Saturday morning, before the wedding of a sister named Frances, not the Frances I told you about earlier, this was a younger Frances, 19 years old, marrying a ministerial servant. I saw that 19-year-old Frances standing alone outside the new brick Kingdom Hall on the edge of town. She was holding her Bible against her chest. She was looking at the parking lot the way an animal looks at a road. I had been the older sister to her in her pioneering year. I knew her. I knew her face, and I knew her family, and I knew what the marriage was going to be. There were things about the brother she was about to marry that everyone knew, and no one said. I stood across the parking lot from her for perhaps 30 seconds, and then I walked the other way around the building so that I would not have to pass her, so that I would not have to take her wrist, so that I could go in and sit down without having become Joyce. Frances is 64 years old now. Her husband is still alive. I have not spoken to Frances about that morning in 45 years. I will not get the chance to. There are things you do not get the chance to do. There is a word for what Joyce was trying to give me that morning in the hallway above the hardware store. It is not a word we were allowed to use inside the truth. We did not believe in it. We did not believe such a thing existed between sisters. Because sisters were not a unit. Sisters were the wives of brothers and the daughters of brothers and the mothers of brothers' children. There was no horizontal line between us, only vertical lines, up to the brothers, up to the elders, up to the governing body, up to Jehovah. Joyce was drawing a horizontal line. It took me 60 years to be able to say it out loud. The word is sisterhood. Joyce was offering me sisterhood, and I refused it, because I had been trained to refuse it, and the woman who would later refuse Francis in a parking lot in 1981 was already that morning in the hallway, fully formed inside the bride. Joyce was not a bitter woman. I want to be careful here. The organization will tell you, when a sister speaks the way Joyce spoke, that she is bitter, that her own marriage has soured her, that she is jealous of the young woman's happiness, that she is, in the language of the society, allowing Satan to use her as an instrument. None of that was true of Joyce. Joyce was 41 years old and 24 years married to a man she did not love and had never been asked whether she loved. Joyce was a fellow captive. Joyce was a woman who had been standing in her own hallway 24 years before, and no older sister had taken her wrist, and Joyce had decided, at some point during those 24 years, that the next time a bride climbed those stairs, Joyce would be the one in the corner. Joyce was not warning me out of bitterness. Joyce was warning me out of love, the kind of love that almost no one had ever shown a sister in our world, because the organization had taught us that love between sisters was a lesser thing than obedience to brothers. Joyce died in 1993. I was at the memorial that year. I sat 3 rows behind her at her last meeting. I did not speak to her. I had not spoken to her in 20 years, not because of anything between us, only because we lived in different congregations, and the years had quietly removed the occasions. At her funeral talk, Brother Reich, who is our presiding overseer now, but who was a young elder then, gave a beautiful talk about Joyce's faithfulness, about her years of regular pioneering, about her quiet support of her husband Wilbur. Wilbur sat in the front row. He died 6 years later. I never told anyone, in the 33 years between her death and now, what Joyce had done for me in the hallway. I never thanked her. I never said her name out loud after the wedding. I live alone in the house on Chestnut Street now. The hardware store on Walnut Street has been closed since 1998. The room above it, the room I was married in, is, the last I knew, used for storage by the people who own the building. They do not know what it was. The Kingdom Hall on the edge of town goes on 3 streets away from me without me. I do not pass it. I take the long way, the way I used to take around the parking lot in 1981, when I was the one not taking a wrist. The songbook is still on my dresser. 63 years. The corners are worn pale. I do not open it. I do not need to. The book remembers. I do not have to. Sister Joyce Yeagle has been gone from this earth for 33 years. The brothers who walked into that meeting room ahead of me, Walter my father, Brother Schaefer, Raymond's father, they are all gone. My mother Pearl has been gone since 1989. Edith has been gone since 1995. Raymond has been gone since the autumn of 2024. The younger Frances, I did not stop in the parking lot in 1981, is 64, and her husband is alive, and they live on the other side of town, and we say hello in the grocery store, and I have never once said the thing. If you ever stood in a hallway, the morning of a thing you were about to do, and an older woman tried to take your wrist, I see you. If you ever felt the grip of a sister, an aunt, a neighbour, a stranger, a co-worker, a woman in a parking lot, and you stepped around her and went through the door anyway, I see you. If you ever were the older woman in the hallway, and you watched a younger one walk past you into a room you knew, and you did not say the thing, I see you. If you ever crossed a parking lot the long way, so that you would not have to be the older sister, I see you. We are not any of us only one of these women. By the time you are 80, you have been all four. The first week of the first autumn I lived alone in this house, the autumn after Raymond, I couldn't decide what to eat for supper. 61 years of someone deciding, and the muscle for it was simply not there. I had to grow it back, one small decision at a time. I learned to choose a soup. I learned to choose a chair to sit in that was not Raymond's chair. I learned to choose what to do with a long Thursday evening that used to be a meeting. So I wrote it all down. Every small thing I did to come back into the shape of a person in the order I learned to do it. I called what I wrote the Freedom Years, because that is what those years were, the years after my obedience, and because if I'm going to leave one thing behind for the women who are 70 and 60 and 50 and 40 and watching me now and wondering how, I would rather it be that. There is a guide and a voice reading it aloud, and it is laid out over 4 weeks, 1 week for each of the 4 it took me to believe my own life was mine. I left it in the first comment of this video, not because I need you to have it, because I would rather you had it than have it die with me. And that is the whole of it. It is late for me. It is not too late for you.